Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 255. Mount Longxiu, Accepting Punishment. The kiss lasted for a long time before Taxian Jun finally let him go. Chu Wanning thought that Taxian Jun would stop there, but unexpectedly, their lips touched again. After repeating this many times, Taxian Jun was finally satisfied. He licked his lips and stared at Chu Wanning's face with his dark eyes. It hasn't changed. It's still you. There were too many things to ask and too many events that need to be explained. Chu Wanning was silent for a moment before he finally said in a hoarse voice. Do you still remember what happened in the past? Of course. Do you still remember how you died? Taxian Jun's expression was a little gloomy. The 10 great sects joined hands to besiege me and I hated it. Then do you still remember how I died? The gloominess between Taxian Jun's eyebrows that had faded a little became covered with another layer of gray. You tried to stop me when I attacked the Kunlun Taxiu Palace. I hated you very much then. Then, do you remember how you came back from the dead? Hua Binan saved me. Do you know the specifics of it? It was. But he didn't continue. Taxian Jun's face gradually showed a trace of fear for a moment, then he closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, they became clear. Taxian Jun frowned and asked, What did you just say? Chu Wanning remained quiet. He now knew more or less what Shimei had done to this body. Since ancient times, people's hearts were the most difficult to control. After Mo Ran died, Shimei couldn't completely suppress the emotions of this body, and he didn't dare to make Mo Ran's already distorted memories even more fragmented, so he had to choose a very small number of important things that would affect Mo Ran's obedience and erase them. The Taxian Jun in front of him was nothing but a walking dead being used as a weapon by Shimei. Chu Wanning closed his eyes. After a while, he seemed to want to say something, but before he could, there was a taste of blood in his throat. He coughed violently. Mo Ran. His lips were stained with blood. He looked up with misty eyes. Stop following somebody else's order. You are already an empty shell. You should rest in peace already. You, cough, cough. His vision turned black and the scattered fragments of memories began to surge upward again. You should have remained on that world, sleeping on the ground. You don't belong on this world. However, he no longer had the strength to say these words. Chu Wanning tried to move his lips as his consciousness began to fade again. In the end, he only saw Taxian Jun frowning and saying something to him. That handsome but pale face seemed to be a little anxious. Chu Wanning. He vaguely heard him calling his name, just like how he did in the other life. Wanning. He closed his eyes and the pain of his soul fusing once again assaulted him. What happened after that, he no longer knew. Thousands of mountains away, the forest was bleak. In the center of Sichuan, it had been raining for the past few days. Even the wooden lattice of the relay station had a layer of fine mold. Looking out from the window of the relay station, a string of water droplets fell from the bamboo leaves and fell into a pool of puddle, creating little ripples. Suddenly, a pair of shoes stepped into the pool of water as the sky and clouds shattered. Grand Master Mo appeared in front of the winding mountain path of Shisheng Peak. After the shocking incident at Mount Longxiu, his spiritual power had not recovered yet, so he could not fly on his sword. Because he was worried about the safety of Shisheng Peak, he rushed back from Mount Longxiu without stopping, spending a total of 4 days traveling. On the way back, he actually thought about many things. Such as, why was he resurrected? Or, why did Chu Wanning of the other life set up such a mysterious arrangement in the cave of Mount Longxiu? Or, about Shimei? After thinking for a long time, he could not find any clear answer. He was not a smart person to begin with. Now that he was suffering and had plenty to be worried about, he could not calm down and think carefully. After all, Shimei indeed knew him. Chu Wanning was his weak spot. Chu Wanning learning about them on the other life is no different than a death sentence for him. His heart was in a mess. The rain gradually became heavier. Mo Ran stood at the entrance of Shisheng Peak, facing the wind. He raised his head and wisps of silver frost fell on his face. In front of him, there was a winding stone staircase leading to the peak of the mountain. He had walked this mountain path in life, in death, in sorrow, and in happiness. He had walked this path countless times in his 2 lives. From the time when he was young and inexperienced, to the time when the dust had settled and he returned with a guilty conscience. The weather was very cold. The rain mixed with snow fell, wetting his black clothes and dyeing his hair. A youth should have no worries, but the north wind blew the snow and turned his hair white. Mo Ran closed his eyes and walked up the stairs to the top of the mountain. A sinner who walked into a trap finally pushed open the red lacquered door of the Loyalty Hall. The door slowly opened. The madness, glory, nightmares, and darkness of his 2 lives all happened here. He remembered the other life. When he was 22 years old, he changed this Loyalty Hall into Wushan Palace. The plaque was smashed and dust filled the air. He stood in front of the old plaque and swore that he would trample on all the cultivators and rule the world. That life stopped here and this life should also end here. The Loyalty Hall was densely packed with people. The number of people here was even more than the time when they suppressed Su Xuanglin on Mount Qiao. Hearing the sound of the door opening, everyone turned around and saw a tall man in black standing in front of the door. His face was pale and there were a few strands of wet black hair on his forehead. The sky was reversed behind him. The dome was lead grey and the rain and snow were falling. No one expected that Mo Ran would suddenly appear like this. Was he the hero on Mount Qiao who lay his life for everyone's safety? Or was he the devil who killed and spilled blood at Gaiyu sect? What kind of person was he? For a moment, no one said anything. Everyone stared at the man who had just returned. Those who trusted him thought he was very pitiful. He was wet and cold, like a hound returning home from the rain. Those who did not trust him only thought he was terrifying. He was gloomy and dark, like a ghost who had crawled out of hell. The rain kept knocking on the roof ridge and green eaves, seeping into the cracks of the stone in front of the stairs and moss on the roof tiles. Mo Ran raised his dark eyes. Under his fan-like eyelashes, his eyes were wet. He said softly, "Uncle, I'm back." Ran air. "Why are you alone?" Xue Zhengyang sat in the sect leader seat. He looked disheveled. It was rare to see him like this, as if he did not care about his appearance. He spread his iron fan on the table casually. The words "the world is ugly" gleamed, like a comment on a farce. "Where's Yu Heng?" When Mo Ran stepped into the hall, he was like a drop of water falling into a pot of boiling oil that had been heated to the utmost, causing a crackling sound. Almost everyone took a big step back when he stepped in front of them. Mo Ran. "Devil, you have the face to come out. You killed so many people at Gaiyu sect and you still dare to show yourself." Mo Ran did not pay attention to these voices. Along the way, he had already heard about the bloody incident that had happened on Gaiyu sect. He knew very well how insane Taxian Jun was. What was a few dozen people? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, everyone in the world was walking dead in his eyes. What's a few in Gaiyu sect? Taxian Jun did not care at all. "Madman. You and Hua Binan are in cahoots. What else do you want to do? Today, all the sect leaders are here. The people from Tianyan Pavilion will be here soon as well. Even if you are full of tricks and had a change of heart, you can't escape this. You're doomed. Mo Ran, you're too cunning." Singing red face for a while and white face next. "You've confused everyone so that your evil plan will succeed. You're so vicious." All around him was a tidal wave of criticism and questioning. Angry faces were surging. Mo Ran did not pay attention to anyone. He continued to walk forward. He more or less understood Hua Binan's intention, forgive him for not wanting to call him Shimei. Hua Binan had dug a grave for him. He had even written the inscription on the tombstone. Hua Binan had calculated very clearly that he would jump in this trap willingly. Because, when Chu Wanning learned of the other life, Mo Weiyu had already judged himself to be a dead body that could not be saved. It was over. No matter how many masks you wear on your face, today heroes are gathered here. We will expose your true colors. We must send you to Tianyan Pavilion to be executed. It was a hubbub of voices. The words that pierced his eardrums the most were the words Tianyan Pavilion. Mo Ran did not expect Hua Binan to drag the Tianyan Pavilion into this. Was it a coincidence? Or was it part of the plan? The mighty Tianyan Pavilion was an ancient sect that had been with the cultivation world for thousands of years. The first sect leader of the sect was the first descendant of a deity and a cultivator, and then later on passed on to the same family for generation after generation. Although the divine blood of the leading family had grown thin through the years, their abundant spiritual energy had been passed on to the current generation. Although the Tianyan Pavilion did not usually involve itself in the mundane world, just like how common people believed in cultivators, cultivators likewise believed in the divine fairness of the Tianyan Pavilion. It was already difficult to overthrow the authority of 100 years, let alone 1,000 years. Therefore, even though Taxian Jun had sought to rule the world in his other life, he had still left the Tianyan Pavilion as it was. Shimei was very smart. It was best to hand Mo Ran over to the Tianyan Pavilion. No one would refuse to accept their verdict, and no one could refuse to accept their verdict. The main hall was noisy. Mo Ran walked along the carpet embroidered with palya. He walked to the front and stood still. This man had only said one word, but it was enough to quell the noisy clamoring around. They stared at him. Many of their eyes were filled with hatred and vigilance. They were waiting for him to explain, for him to lose his composure, for him to make a mistake. They craned their necks, ready to pounce on this treacherous demon at any time and tear him to pieces. It was hard to tell whether this person was good or evil. His actions were unpredictable, but they would rather kill by mistake than let him go. They had to. I'm here to accept my punishment. There was complete silence. It was even quieter than before. It was as if they were sharpening their swords in preparation for a big battle. The sound of battle cry shook the heavens, but they suddenly found out that the enemy's general was already in his tent. It was ridiculous. What did he say? After a while, someone reacted. He could not believe that this demon would admit his guilt so easily. He asked the person beside him in a low voice, did he say that he was here to accept his punishment? Mo Ran lowered his eyes and knelt down. He faced his uncle, auntie, and Xue Meng, whose face was as white as a sheet. The dim light shone on his handsome but thin face. He was indeed going to be executed. However, since Hua Binan had plotted against him, he would not let that person get away with it. Before he confessed, he still had one more thing to do. He wanted to use his last bit of strength to protect the person he had failed. Thus, Mo Ran slowly opened his mouth. His voice was deep and burning. My hands are indeed stained with blood. Because of my personal enmity, I killed many people. Although I wanted to repent these past few years, my crimes are still unforgivable. Chu Wanning already knows about this. Today, in front of everyone, other than confessing my crimes, I also have another matter to announce. He paused. His words were like knives cutting into people's hearts. Chu Wanning and I are no longer master and disciple. Hearing this, most of the people present were stunned. What's going on? It should be known that a master and disciple publicly breaking off their relationship was a huge scandal in the cultivation world. When this happened, no matter if it was the master or the disciple, it would be very embarrassing. Thus, as long as there was no blood feud, even if the relationship was not good, they would pretend that nothing has changed. After the shocking announcement, Many people whispered, weren't they fine before? Why did it suddenly become like this? Could it be that he wants to trick us? It doesn't look like it. Could it be that something happened between them on Mount Qiao? It's possible. Chu Wanning doesn't seem to care much about his disciples. When Shi Mingjing was captured by Hua Binan, didn't he also not help him? Later on, he even blinded himself. If I were his disciple, I would also be bitterly disappointed. The people's voices rose and fell like a tide. In the midst of these voices, Mo Ran continued, he won't tolerate me killing and committing arson, but all this while he has been treating me coldly and humiliated my dignity. This person was full of compassion about the common people, but he treats his disciples badly. How hypocritical is that? If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have reached this point. It was too painful. He stopped talking. His lips and teeth were slightly trembling, but he still finished speaking word by word. He cut himself into 1,000 pieces. It was him who harmed me. It was him who wronged me. I didn't get along with him. I was ashamed to have him as my master. Now, I have completely cut off all ties with Chu Wanning. In the future, if anyone still treats me as his disciple. He raised his eyes. They were a pair of Taxian Jun's eyes. That would be disgusting to me. I hope you won't mention it again. Xue Zhenyang was horrified. Ran air. Xue Meng's face got even paler. Brother, are you crazy? Do you know what you just said? Mo Ran closed his eyes. He didn't want to look at anyone in Xue Meng's family. The word brother was like a sharp claw that pierced his heart. Mo Ran continued, apart from that, I have one more thing to say. Just admit your guilt. There's no need to add 1, 2, or 3 more things. Before that person finished complaining, he was stopped by the current leader of the cultivation world, Zhang Shi. Zhang Shi looked at Mo Ran and said, please speak. Mo Ran said, my sins are grave. It's true that I admit my guilt and accept my punishment. However, the incident on Linling Isle was not my doing. Many of the cultivators present were here to collect their blood debts. They were already very agitated. Hearing him deny the murder at Gai Yuye sect, they couldn't help but be furious. They all spoke. Ha! What a joke! This is an ironclad fact. What else do you have to argue about? That's right. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Mo Ran said, I wasn't at Gai Yuye sect at that time. At that time, Chu Wanning and I were both at Mount Qiao. The person who did this was someone else. And that person, if I'm not wrong, should be. He hesitated. He didn't immediately reveal the identity of Taxian Jun. He wasn't afraid of the anger of this crowd. He just thought that no one present would believe that a gate of time and space, life and death had been opened and that another Mo Ran had appeared from that rift. Who is it? Mo Ran pursed his lips. He decided not to talk about Taxian Jun until later. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said, I can't tell who is it right now. I can only tell you that this person works with Hua Binan. He went to Gai Yuye sect to frame me while Hua Binan took Chu Wanning away. After he finished speaking, the crowd split into 2 groups. The first group was weak, but they could be heard clearly. Most of them were from Shi Shengpeak. What happened to Elder Yu Heng? Where was Elder Yu Heng taken to? The other group was those who had come to denounce him. Mo Ran, do you think we'll believe you? I don't know what kind of medicine you're selling in your gourd. What do you mean by someone else? I think you and Hua Binan are in cahoots. On Mount Qiao, the 2 of you colluded to put on a show. You didn't hesitate to kill so many people. You even disregarded the friendship between your fellow disciples and harmed Shi Mingjing. You're a liar. Hearing Shi Mei's name, Mo Ran slowly raised his head. He looked at Xue Zhenyang, then at Xue Meng. Shi Mei, he. Xuemeng was worried. He rushed forward. What happened to Shimei? Is he all right? Mo Ran couldn't look him in the eye. Seeing a person's broken appearance once was enough. Mo Ran closed his eyes. Shimei is Hua Binan. Dead silence. After a while, Xuemeng suddenly fell back into his seat. He muttered, "What kind of joke is this? How is this possible?" That's right. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears, Mo Ran would also want to say, "How is this possible?" Shimei was obviously so gentle and kind. The three of them had gone through so much together. To him, Shimei was the first true friend of the same generation in his life. But this friendship was fake. It was nothing more than an illusion. It was ridiculous. The people around them started to talk. What kind of nonsense is this? He's crazy. How can such an insignificant cultivator be the world's #1 medical cultivator? If Shimei is Hua Binan, why did he help us get rid of the heart drill worm on Mount Qiao? There were also people here who were saved by Shimei on Mount Qiao. They were very grateful to Shimei, and thus at this moment, they pointed at him and said angrily, "Mo Ran, in order to wash away your sins, you actually said such a ridiculous thing. You're slandering him." At this time, Zhang Shi, who had been frowning and silent all this time, finally spoke. "What evidence do you have to prove that Hua Binan is Shi Mingjing?" Zhang Shi said, "Hua Binan has been under my tutelage for many years. He almost never left the vicinity of Gai Ye sect. If you say that he is Shi Mingjing, then how could he appear in two places at the same time?" End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 256. Tianyan Pavilion. Ebbs and flows of life. Hanlin Divine Hand always covers his face with a black veil and secludes himself in the workroom all year round. He rarely interacts with the outside world, so as long as he controls a person of a similar figure, it's hard for others to notice. Zhang Shi frowned and said, "Do you mean that Hua Binan is the fake? Sometimes it's the real one, sometimes it's not. If you don't want to be discovered, it's best to mix the real with the fake." Zhang Shi thought and said, "If that's the case, Shi Mingjing should know how to use the Zhenlong chess formation. However, his spiritual power is not strong enough, so it's unlikely that he can master this kind of technique." Sect Master Zhang is right. The Zhenlong chess formation requires a lot of spiritual power. Hua Binan knows the theory, but because of his weak spiritual power, he can't use it alone. So, he had to conspire with Su Xuanglin before. Zhang Shi shook his head and said, "That's not right. Su Xuanglin once said that the person behind the scenes was his close friend. Because he didn't want to betray his friend, he didn't tell us who that person was until he died. According to what you said, Shi Mingjing is Hua Binan, so Su Xuanglin should be able to recognize him. Then why didn't Su Xuanglin betray him after Hua Binan destroyed the rebirth array?" Mo Ran said, "That's because Su Xuanglin didn't know that Shi Mei and Hua Binan were the same person." Master Xianjing, who was beside them, said, "Since they were close friends, how could he not know such a big thing?" Su Xuanglin treated Shi Mei as a close friend, Mo Ran said, "but Shi Mei couldn't really open his heart to him. On this chessboard, Su Xuanglin is just an important chess piece, that's all." He paused and continued, "When Hua Binan was injured in the main hall at Mount Qiao, he took off his veil. That face was extremely ugly as it was deformed. Now that I thought about it, it was probably just an exquisitely made human skin mask. For Su Xuanglin, he had probably only seen the first face of his close friend, which was Shi Mei's face. He would never associate Hua Binan with Shi Mei. Therefore, even until his death, he did not think that he was being framed or used by his close friend. Naturally, he would not reveal the truth." Zhang Shi said, "According to what you're saying, when Shi Mingjing and Hua Binan appeared at the same time on Mount Qiao, one of them was a control chess piece. I guess so. But there is a second possibility. What? Moran shook his head. I would talk about the second possibility later. Master Xianjing said, even if Benefactor Mo's first possibility is correct, I still feel that there is something that doesn't make sense. Hua Binan has no reason to interrupt Su Xuanglин's rebirth array. Could it be that he has a grudge against Su Xuanglin? Could it be that letting Su Xuanglin get what he wanted and let Luo Fenghua be reborn hurt him in some way? Moran sighed. Master, have you forgotten the final result of Su Xuanglин's spell? The old bald donkey did not react for a moment and shook his head. Moran said, from the rift that had appeared from the formation that day, what she may teach Su Xuanglin was not a real rebirth array. Ah! He has been deceiving Su Xuanglin all this time. Su Xuanglin spent a lot of effort thinking that he was setting up a rebirth formation, but in fact, he was making a wedding dress for Hua Binan, who did not have enough spiritual power. Then what did Hua Binan teach? It was the foremost forbidden technique. Moran paused and finally said, what he taught Su Xuanglin was the gate of time and space, life and death. Those who had participated in the battle on Mount Jiao could not help but recall the black hole in the sky and the thousands of mysterious cultivators that came out of it. Was that the gate of time and space, life and death? Moran continued, this is the second possibility I just mentioned. If the gate of time and space, life and death was activated, both Hua Binan and Shimei could be real. It's just that one belongs to this world and time while the other belonged to another. After hearing this, everyone was silent. Then someone slapped his leg and laughed. Grandmaster Mo, are you trying to coax a child to sleep? Using this kind of mythical forbidden technique to scare people. Tu Shiming Jing. Ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. That's right, how is that possible? That's a forbidden technique that has been lost for thousands of years. How can one learn it? The most important scroll of the Gate of Life and Death is said to have been sealed in a box made of the Flame Emperor's divine wood a long time ago. Even if someone studied this forbidden technique, the most they could learn was create rift in space, not time. Otherwise, if one world overlapped with another, wouldn't the world be in chaos? Moran did not argue with them. Instead, he told them all his thoughts. He knew that this was probably the last time he would be allowed to speak as Grandmaster Mo. After today, these people might not even give him a chance to explain anything in the future. He used his confession in exchange for these people to calm down a little. He only hoped that he could tell everyone what he knew and guessed. Regardless of whether they believed it or not, what he said should serve as a warning. If anything happened in the future, more or less people would remember his warning today. Perhaps it was not too late. Everyone, think about it. If I were Hua Binan and I knew the techniques of Zhenlong chess formation and gate of time and space, life and death, but I was born with insufficient spiritual power and did not have the status to do anything of note, what would I do? Most of the people present had a grudge against Moran and were not willing to listen to his advice. But Zhang Shi admired Moran because of some of the things that had happened before. Not to mention, he was also suspicious about the bloodshed at Gaiyuye sect. Therefore, after thinking seriously for a while, he said, I will find someone to help. Who would help you? Nobody. Moran said, yes, there is no one, so I can only lie. Lie to someone like Su Xuanglin who has a great desire in his heart and to pretend to help him complete his plan step by step. Master Xianjing said, Benefactor Mo is ridiculous. Can't that array be something else? The gate of time and space, life and death is not something that ordinary people can learn. For thousands of years, no one has ever learned it. The most important part of the book has already been lost. Who would be able to learn it? That's right. This is simply too fantastic. Why don't you just say that the great god Fuxi has descended? This is no different from claiming that someone had learned the technique of gate of time and space, life and death. It's really ridiculous. Even storytellers don't dare to say that. The loyalty hall was buzzing. In the end, someone sneered and said, "Grandmaster Mo, after such a long preparation, are you going to tell us that the one who committed murder at the Gaiuye sect is the other you who came to this world through the gate of time and space, life and death?" Mo ran. Seeing that he did not say anything, someone in the hall laughed. "Amazing, really amazing." In order to exonerate himself, Grandmaster Mo is really willing to make up any excuse. "So, after beating around the bush for so long, you only want to clear your name?" Jiang Shi could not stand the noise. He turned around and said angrily to the people who were leading the crowd, "Just speak. Why are you being so sarcastic?" Master Xianjing put his palms together and said, "Sect leader Jiang, it's not that we're being sarcastic. It's just that Grandmaster Mo's words are too unbelievable. In my opinion, we should invite him to the Tianyan Pavilion for interrogation before making a decision." "Yes, the pavilion master of the Tianyan Pavilion will be here soon. When she comes, let Grandmaster Mo go with her." Before Jiang Shi could say anything, Xue Zhenyang spoke. Although he had mixed feelings, he still said, "I think what Ran Air said makes sense. Maybe a gate of time and space, life and date was really opened. Tianyan Pavilion is a place for heinous criminals. He can't go there until matters has been cleared up." "That's right." A disciple of Shi Shengpeak stood out, "At Mount Jiao when everyone was on the brink of death. If Mo Shixing didn't save you then, you wouldn't be standing here. If he wanted to overturn the cultivation world, he could have just let everyone stay trapped in Mount Xiao." Master Xianjing was stunned. "This." Someone shouted, "That's true. At that time, everyone was trapped in Mount Xiao. It was Grandmaster Mo who tried to get us out. If he wanted to harm people, he had the opportunity there." These words were true. Many people thought about this question and were silent for a while. But silence didn't mean agreement. Many people present were still wearing mourning clothes at this moment. Their relatives and friends had just died, and they were extremely sad. What's more, the survivors from Mount Jiao had seen Mo Ran kill people with their own eyes. Among the witnesses, except for Mei Hangxiu, who expressed doubts about the situation at that time, everyone else was sure that it was Mo Ran himself. Under such circumstances, it was easier for them to condemn Mo Ran rather than believe in the gate of time and space, life and death which had only appeared in legends. "So soon," someone else retorted, "however, something about this matter is not right. On Mount Huang, Grandmaster Mo's understanding of the entire situation and the Zhenlong chess formation was extremely accurate. He said that Shi Mingjing knew the Zhenlong chess formation, but I feel that the person who knows a lot about this forbidden technique is himself." "That's right." After the rebuttal, someone immediately echoed, "There's one more thing. Don't you think it's strange? Why can Mo Ran open the barrier of Mount Xiao? He's not a descendant of the Nangong family." At this time, a woman's voice suddenly came from outside of the loyalty hall. "There's nothing strange about this. Because the blood flowing in Grandmaster Mo's body is the blood of the Nangong family." Everyone suddenly turned their heads and saw a group of cultivators wearing silver-green clothes and a silver medal with the word heaven on their waists charging straight in. The leader was a beautiful woman who looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. She had bright eyes and a beautiful face. She was extremely beautiful and could even be compared to the number one beauty of the cultivation world, Song Kaiyutong. However, although she was beautiful, her temperament was very cold. When everyone saw her, most of them changed their expressions. Even some of the sect leaders had a look of awe on their faces. Only Jiang Shi didn't have much of a reaction. He merely nodded and said, "The pavilion master is finally here." This woman was the pavilion master of the Tianyan Pavilion, Mu Yanli, who hadn't shown up in Jianghu for a long time. Mu Yanli was in charge of the Tianyan Pavilion. All the grave cases in the cultivation world would eventually fall into her hands and she would preside over the trial. However, there weren't many cases that required the Tianyan Pavilion's involvement, so it's normal for the sect leader of the Tianyan Pavilion to not show up in public for 10 or 20 years. Because she didn't go out often, Mu Yanli's skin was fairly white, with the light blue veins under her skin could be seen faintly. She walked into the hall and stopped, saying lightly, "Apologies for making you all wait." Master Xianjing asked, "Pavilion Master, you're a bit later than the appointed time. Did something happen in the pavilion?" Mu Yanli shook her head. "That's not the case. The Tianyan Pavilion never accuse people without evidence. Therefore, before we came here, we thoroughly investigated the past of Shi Shengpeak's Grand Master Mo." She paused and looked at Mo Ran coldly with her almond-shaped eyes. Her red lips moved slightly. "After this investigation, we found that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The identity of this Grand Master Mo was actually related to an old case in Xiongtan from many years ago." Everyone looked at each other in confusion. "What old case?" Only Mo Ran's face turned pale, as his palms started to sweat. He didn't expect that this matter would be revealed at this moment. Mu Yanli was like an executioner. She looked at the man kneeling in front of the hall coldly and said, "Mo Weiyu, let's talk about this. You know your own background. Do you want to tell the public yourself or do you want me to invite a witness into the hall?" Mo Ran closed his eyes. When he was resurrected, he knew that if he wanted to live a carefree life, there were a few people in this world that he had to kill with his own hands to prevent future troubles. But in the beginning, he didn't have the strength and opportunity. Later, when he had the strength and opportunity, he was no longer willing to take other people's lives for his own personal gain. He had killed enough people in his other life. Mu Yanli saw that he intended to keep silent, so she said, "It seems that Grand Master Mo doesn't intend to confess." After she finished speaking, her cold and beautiful face showed a trace of undisguised contempt. Then, she turned around and faced the crowd. Her voice was like a bell, penetrating people's hearts. "Then let me say it. Everyone, listen, this famous Grand Master, before he entered Shi Shengpeak was already a murderer who took dozens of lives. Such a vicious person should have been brought to justice long ago. What? Before he entered the sect, he had already killed dozens of people." Xuemeng opened his eyes wide, full of confusion. He muttered, "Brother?" His voice was neither soft nor loud, but it just happened to fall into Mu Yanli's ears. Mu Yanli glanced at the young master of Shi Shengpeak and said indifferently, "Brother." Xuemeng. The rain and snow outside were getting heavier and heavier, and the sky was getting darker and darker. Even though the hall was brightly lit, it was pressuring him to the point where he couldn't breathe. Mu Yanli looked at Mo Ran with contempt, but looked at Xuemeng with ridicule. Her lips were like rosy clouds as she said, "Young Master Xue is really pitiful for claiming a foe as a brother." Xuemeng obviously didn't understand the meaning of the sentence, but his brain was already roaring like thunder, as if the earth was splitting and the sky was collapsing. He opened his clear eyes and took a step back. What do you mean by claiming a foe as a brother?" His whole body began to tremble. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Mu Yanli ignored him, turned around and said, "Mo Weiyu is not sect leader Xue's nephew. What's more." She paused, and her pair of beautiful and emotionless eyes were like sharp knives, sweeping past Xue Zhenyang and Madame Wang's faces. She said, "Not without fairness, not without cruelty, sect leader Xue's nephew died at the hands of Mo Ran 8 years ago." End chapter.